cards. Now, we've got new super quantal support. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there's only one super quantal in the world, and that's my buddy Quantal Think. So that's the only super quantal I need. Everything else is kind of just like a bonus on top that I don't really need. But the thing with super quants, is basically just that there's been two ways how these cards have been used in the past. Which one of them was as their own deck, which has never really been a thing. The super quantals as its own deck, like it has this crazy towers monster where like it just makes great Magnus and then sits on that card and wins the game off of it, which I think has like one even noteworthy achievement. I think it won like an ARG back in the day in the hands of Calvin Tahan, I think. Which is the only thing I've ever heard from pure super quantals, I think. Other than that, they were actually pretty solid cards overall, especially Red Layer as like a warrior extender, or Blue Layer as a teleport target and stuff like that. Like they've been splashed into other things, but that's the only thing I literally remember those cards doing. Also, the rank 3 was like a solid generic extra deck option at some point, because like they have like the super quantum blue dude from the extra deck is like a rank 3 that can pop spell trap cards. So like that's been used sometimes in like Burning Abyss decks and stuff like that. But that's about it. So it doesn't really have an identity as its own deck other than Towers Turbo, which is not the most fun thing, but we'll see if these new cards change that in any shape or form. We've got Super Quantal Fairy Zayden over here, which is a level 1 Dark Zombie with 0/0. Can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. If this card is in your hand and you control a Super Quant monster other than Super Quantal Fairy Zayden, you can special summon this card, then you can make its level become the level of one Super Quant you control. You contribute this card and send a Super Quant card from your deck to the graveyard except a Dark Monster. That's a cost. Special summon a Super Quant monster from your deck except Super Quantal Fairy Zayden. That seems pretty powerful. I am struggling to remember if any of the Super Quantals that already exist have a good graveyard effect. Like, is that cost we are paying here? Is that an actual bonus? Is there something great we can do? Green is a draw, red layer is a revive. Okay, let me, just for context, hold up. Let me quickly, let me bring that up. Super Quant theme deck. Just, it's not that many cards. Let's just really quickly get them for context. So you've got Blue Layer over here, which if this card is sent to the graveyard, target up to 3 Super Quantal cards in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck. So that gives you recursion. This one says, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can discard a Super Quant card, draw a card. Okay, that's not terrible. You do have to discard for it, but that's not bad. Then we've got Red Layer, which is, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a Super Quant monster in your grave except Red Layer, special summon it, but it cannot activate its effects. Okay, so that's probably the best use, because you're going to send, this is going to be in your graveyard, right? This is going to be in your graveyard. So you will get the revive from Red Layer immediately. Okay, White Layer. Tribute this card, reveal 3 Super Quants, and send the rest. But that doesn't have a graveyard effect, right? Tribute this card, reveal 3, picks 1 to special, send the rest to the grave. Okay. Yeah, I mean, good card. For sure. That's not White Layer. Oh, there's a different white one? Oh, they already had support. I didn't know that. I didn't know the second wave existed, to be honest with you. I know none of these cards up here. You can send a non-light Super Quant from your hand or face up field to the grave. Special summon this card from your hand. When this card is normal or special, send a Super Quant from deck to the grave. If you do, this card attribute and level become that monster's. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a Super Quantal Fairy Alphon from your deck or grave to your hand. Okay, that's also useful. That's also useful as a graveyard effect for sure. Okay. Yeah, pretty good card then. for Super Quantals. That seems like a pretty broken extender. / it can also be a starter. It's also a 1-for-1 target. That seems pretty neat. Then we've got Super Quantum Black Layer, which is a level 7. This is just Fenrir, by the way. This is just Fenrir. That is just alt art Fenrir. This is just them. Maybe look. This is them. Isn't Fenrir banned in the OCG? Yes. Okay, here's my theory. They designed an alt art for Fenrir, but then decided they were going to ban it. But the art is out there, you know. We've already paid an artist to make the art for us, so we're going to put it on a different card. We just have to wait a appropriate amount of time so no one notices. Didn't wait long enough. I noticed. That's just Fenrir. That's just Fenrir. You can only use the first, second, and third effect of this card's name each once per turn. When your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can discard one other card, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned, you can special summon a Super Quantal Mech Beast Xyz monster from your extra deck by using this card you control as material. This is treated as an Xyz summon, and if you do, attach a Super Quant monster from your graveyard to it as additional material. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a Super Quant spell from your deck to your hand. That's pretty good. That's essentially just like a hand trap. Which of these are Super Quantal Beasts? Because I remember they all have additional effects if they have the correct material attached. So let's say the way this would work is you discard. You have to discard a Super Quant for this. It doesn't specify this, but if you don't discard a Super Quant for this, you can't use the other effect, right? Because you have to attach a Super Quant from your graveyard to it as material. That is not an option. The way it's written, you have to have a Super Quant in your graveyard to be able to do this. So if you're going second and it's the first turn of the game, you have to discard a Super Quant for this. Otherwise, it'll not rank up. So if you discard Green Layer, you could make Ouroboros, which I think is a Book of Moon, which is pretty good. If you discard Blue Layer, you can make the Grampulse, which is a Spell Trap Destruction, which can sometimes be good against the right deck, you know? If you have Red Layer, you can make this, which says you can detach an Xyz monster material from this card, target a monster on the field, destroy it, which is also a quick effect if it has Red Layer as material, so it can be a pop. So, and then what is this one? The light one is negate that face-up monster's effects until the end of this turn. This is a quick effect. So, depending on which one you discard, you can rank up into either an MST, a Book of Moon, a Destruction, or like an Imperm, which is all in its own. Like you are investing some cards from your hand into this sort of thing. I think that's fair. That's pretty cool though. The fact that it can be different forms of disruption if you pair it with a different card. Yeah. Are you sure you need a target engrave beforehand turn 0 other than the card you discard? No, the card you discard has to be a Super Quantal, then it works. That's what I said. You don't have to have one before you summon it, but after, if you want to rank up with it, you need one in the graveyard. So what you discard for it has to be a Super Quantal, is what I said. Because yes, you can discard any other card for it, but then you won't get anything from it. Like this is just a 2400 body if you don't discard a Super Quantal for it. This is neat. So like you are investing 2 cards for a disruption here, but you are getting those cards back later, right? Like you will be sending this to the graveyard eventually to get a Super Quantal spell from your deck, which is good. And whatever you discard, most of them have graveyard effects, as we just read. So if you discard like a Red Layer, and the Red Layer is material now, later on it's going to go to the graveyard and revive a different card from your graveyard. So like you're investing cards, but you're getting them back later, and you are getting disruption out of it, which I think is overall pretty powerful, pretty good card, I think. The only thing that I'd be worried about is that how good is this card going first? Because it is, at the end of the day, it's a level 7 monster. that if you draw it in your opening hand and you're trying to go first with this deck, then it's not trivial to just like use it. Of course, it helps you play through hand traps because this does work on your turn if your opponent ashes you or something. So that's neat. Also, if you discard it for other things, it will still search a spell card. So overall, I think pretty good and balanced card. Pretty powerful. We have Layer 19, preventing the invasion to pitch black super quantum. Okay, that's a lot of words. That's a lot of words. Quick play spell. Activate one of these effects, but you can only use each effect once per turn. You can either target an attack position monster, change it to defense position. Okay, mainly not face down defense position. Otherwise, that would just be Book of Moon. Just to defense is not as good. If you control a super quant monster, special summon a super quant monster from your deck in defense position with a different original attribute from the monsters you control. That's very powerful. Or you can set a super quant trap from your deck. It can't be activated this turn. That's really good. That is essentially Theosis, right? That's pretty much Theosis. And it also has a secondary effect that gets you the trap cards, which there's no new trap card here. So that would be Super Quant Union Magna Formation. Your opponent cannot target Super Quants with card effects during your main phase 1. You can target a Super Quant, attach one other face on monster as material. That doesn't seem that great. Magna Slayer is target a Super Quantic Seize, equip this card to it. It gains attack equal to its rank times 100. Inflict piercing battle damage during your battle phase. The monster can make 3 attacks. I don't know if it's worth playing those trap cards. I think the main effect you're going to want to use with this card is always the second one. That's always what you want to do. I don't know if it's even worth putting the trap cards in your deck. Sometimes there's going to be situations where the first effect comes in handy. Because like it's maybe you draw 2 copies and like you just turn a big monster to defense. That can help sometimes. But mainly you're going to want to use the second effect. But already the card is definitely good enough without the utility of multiple different effects. Like the second effect is already worth playing. So that is pretty good, yeah. Now here's the thing. These are 3 good cards. All 3 of these cards are very high quality. The problem is the archetype that they're being thrown into is this, which kind of feels like it needs a little bit more than just a couple of good main deck engine pieces, is because that's what this is, right? It doesn't give you any alternative end boards or boss monsters or anything like that. It's just more like consistency and some extension and some other starters and stuff like that, but not really any different routes. So like, are we just going to, is this just going to be still a Towers Turbo kind of deck? Like, are we still going to just make Magnus? Which, I don't know if this card has the same, like, power as it used to. What is the link to? The link 3 says, Link summoned card cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. Each time a Super Quant Xyz monster with a different name from the cards you control is special summoned to a zone this card points to, draw a card. Oh, that's neat. I like drawing cards. If a face-up Xyz monster this card points to is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special a Super Quant monster from your deck with the same original. Only use each effect once per turn. See, seems neat, but seems like a lot of work to draw maybe a card or 2 to invest like 3 monsters into. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely not a win con. That's the thing. Like, this is more like an engine piece that if you're resolving your combo and you basically go completely crazy and your opponent isn't stopping you, you can make this to draw some extra cards, but it's not like, this is not the thing that wins you the game. The only card here in this entire archetype that really wins you the game is like this dude. Which would end up making this deck pretty vulnerable to a couple of things like, I mean, a 3600 Towers is already not as good anymore as it used to be, because there are decks now that can summon monsters that are just bigger than it. That was not often the case with the deck back in the day. And this card, for all intents and purposes, this card is essentially a worse X Purely Noir, right? Because if Noir has Delicious Memory attached, it's usually bigger. And this can only spin once per turn during the main phase. So, like, if your opponent is threatening to out your Noir, you can just spin, like, all of their stuff. If you have 6 or 8 materials, you'll spin 3 or 4 cards away. So if your opponent is actually committing to outing the Noir with, like, a really big monster, you can just spin away all their stuff. This thing can only spin once and only during the main phase. So I don't know if that's the greatest win con ever. But these new cards are great. These new cards are great. For sure. Yeah, but Noir is not a Colossus. I mean, yeah, it does have that additional bonus, which is very powerful. But here's the thing. I don't know how often you're actually making it with 6+. I'm sure it's possible if you go completely uninterrupted. But surely there's also worlds where you just pass on 4 or 5 materials. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't played Super Quantals. I don't know how resilient to hand traps it's going to be and how, like, you know... Magnus also doesn't target. Yeah. But then again, even if what you're saying is true, even if we can make this with 6 materials super consistently when we're going first, how does this deck function going second? Which I guess this new card does help with that a little bit. Which is, I think, the coolest part of this entire wave of support is that this thing is good going second. I like that design on this thing. So maybe it's something worth looking at once these cards come out. My personal prediction is I don't think a deck relying on solely one Towers monster, even if that Towers monster is very powerful, I don't think that is going to be something you will want to rely on.